Oh, we have an audience member. Hmm.
Let's hope it doesn't get that far.
Huh?
Yeah, I really like it.
Raul's on his way too, but
Okay.
You should.
We can get started and catch up to when they get here, so.
this is the May 13, 2020 regular meeting of the Holland City Council. We are gathered here in person tonight, all wearing personal protective gear and stationed at least 6 feet apart from one another. We're going to try to maintain as much social distancing as we can, and we're going to ask members of the audience and anybody that is here to speak with public comment to follow those rules as well, the same as we would any rules regarding keeping order in a meeting. To start the meeting off, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Bird,
Present.
Peters,
Here.
Garcia, Trethewey,
Here.
Arnshorst. Here. Corbin, Hoekstra,
Here.
Raymond. Here. Mayor Box.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We're going to begin the meeting as we have for quite some time with an opening prayer by Councilman Hoekstra this evening, and then immediately followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And we would ask that you would join us if you'd like.
Be so inclined, I invite you to join the prayer. Lord, we thank you for being with us tonight, for a time of good weather, for the beauty that's all around us, even though we weren't able to celebrate the normal Tulip time this year. We're thankful that you continue to be with us and provide the natural beauty that we see. Thank you for this group that's here. We ask that you will give us clear minds, clear vision, the ability to make wise and informed decisions. And as we're in this, continue to be in this unusual time, Lord, we ask that you'll give us as well patience, that you'll give us discernment and the grace and understanding to act toward each other with the common good in mind for all, not just individuals, but what's good for the entire group. So we just thank you for your bountifulness, for your steadfastness, and ask you to be with us this night. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I would like to note for the record that Councilman Garcia has joined us this evening. Good to see you. Good to see you, Raul. Next item on the agenda is the consent items. These are items that are considered to be relatively routine and will be acted upon with one motion unless any member of the audience or any member of council asks that they be removed from the consent agenda. And if that is the case, then they will be placed in their regular order on the regular agenda. Kathy, could you please read the consent agenda for us?
Council minutes, April 15th regular meeting and April 29, 2020 study session. Claims filed against the city. Annual business license renewals for 2020, 2021. Night magic displays, 4th of July fireworks request. March financial reports. Holland Smart Zone Lakeshore Development Finance Authority approved fiscal year 2021 budget. Holland Smart Zone Local Development Finance Authority approved contract regarding city services. Approved asphalt miller attachment purchase. Revocable license agreement, 908 Washington Avenue. Revocable license agreement, 393 Cleveland Avenue. Michigan Department of Natural Resources, no wake zone. Set public hearing May 20, 2020, in-person regular meeting.
Great, thank you very much. Before we move on to anything else, I would also like to note that Councilman Corbin has joined us this evening. Good to see you, Scott. And we do have everyone here in attendance this evening. That's wonderful. Thank you all. Are there any members of the audience that would like an item, one or more items from the consent agenda moved to the regular agenda? Seeing none, are there any members of council who would like to have an item from the consent agenda moved to the regular agenda? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to adopt agenda as presented.
Moved by Trethewey,
Support?
support by Ernsthorst. Is there any discussion? Kathy, could you please call the roll?
Byrd?
Yes.
Peters? Garcia?
Yes.
Trethewey?
Yes.
Arnshorst?
Yes.
Corbin? Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. Next item is public comment. This is the portion of the meeting where we generally receive public comment from anyone who is here in person. If you are here to speak on a matter that is not otherwise set for a public hearing tonight, this is your opportunity. Please note that this is one-way communication. We will not be answering questions or responding to questions at all from council. This is your opportunity to speak to us. We would also like to note that we'd ask you to limit your comments to 5 minutes. There are 3 lights on the dais in front of me. There's a green light. If the light's green, you're doing well. If there's a yellow light, that means you have 1 minute or less available. And when the red light hits, your time is up. And we are very strict about maintaining those time rules. We will also be receiving, following, if there are any in-person public comments, there are some public comments that can be made by email as well. We have adopted that based on the fact that we've got a pandemic going on and we wanted to give people the opportunity to continue to make public comment. And that email address for anyone who is listening is publiccomment@cityofholland.com. That's publiccomment@cityofholland.com. Now, having said that, is there anyone here in person who would like to make a comment to council? And could you please state your name and your address for the record?
Ann Henriksen, 338 Royal Park Drive, Zealand. It's good to see you all. We're all healthy. That's good. Spent the afternoon watching the budget study session. Outstanding presentation by the city manager and different departments. Factoring the current status of the impact of the COVID-19 and serious implications of our economy, these projections give us fiscally sound ground to move forward. Also have watched the Vimeo cam presentations and thanked the mayor for his participation. This being said, City of Holland is not just about the mayor, but about all the leadership of the council. I would like to suggest more participation with the different council members. A good example was Councilman Garcia with his little girls celebrating the Michigan heritage. It would have been important to the Hispanic community and to all of us to have him speak, thanking this culture for their contribution in making Holland such a good place to live. I would also like to see engagement of the Asian, African American, Middle Eastern cultures featured in these video cams. This would emphasize the one Holland that Mayor Box often speaks of. Please also consider being visible to your district. I was thinking about Councilwoman Raymond campaigning and how many related to her sincere earnestness to listen. She wrote down their ideas and thoughts, which indicated their importance. Councilman Corbin had monthly interactions with his district, emphasizing his availability. So it would be good to be very present to your neighborhoods to assure them that we are here for each other. We are in a place of such uncertainty. Families will have increased challenges with financial, education, housing, utilities, etc. The personal concern of the city council members is vital. The word sustainability now has taken on a new meaning. I have two concerns this evening. One is based on, I believe it was the April 15th, I might have the wrong date, council meeting. This was somewhat mentioned by the mayor in the budget item. That was civil discourse. It is a priority and obligation and the council's responsibility, Mayor Box said. I would appreciate your viewing the April 15th meeting as a council and perhaps revisiting David Mitema's governing consultant materials on how to govern well. I attended those meetings, particularly the last one, with a summary of the principles of being united as a council. Misunderstanding is one thing, but deliberate division demanding personal agendas is outrageous in these critical times of this life-threatening disease that is upon the world. It is my hope that the April meeting will be a documentation video and a valuable reminder of each member of the council to hold the others accountable. The second concern I have that was mentioned in the budget was diversity, equity, and inclusion. Typically, the phrase has meant the proposed ordinance of protection for sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. Something has changed. Now that it is in the budget, what exactly does it entail? Do you have a definition of what those terms mean? Apparently, there has been money allocated in attending different events as a priority in order to support and have public engagement. Councilman Corbin asked appropriately, does diversity, equity, and inclusion include the handicapped? The answer was yes. The nonprofit Compassionate Heart organization provides a social environment for special needs adults in the county. It has strong Christian guidelines. Will this be a problem? Along this line of clarification, I have a question. Will the council members be advised to be present at faith-based events like Kids Hope, supporting education in schools, Lakeshore Pregnancy, Teen Moms, Gateway Holland Rescue Mission? The usual response to faith-based events is separation of church and state, which is inappropriate consideration constitutionally. All these organizations are Christian nonprofits and contribute greatly to support the community. This is who Holland is. Are we truly one Holland, yet politically, politely discriminating against people of faith? Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Is there anyone else here that would like to address council? Yes, and would you please state your name and your address for the record?
Sure. My name is Sean Miller. We live at 1175 Janus Street in Holland. Mayor and council, nice to see you guys. I served a historically short vacancy on this council at one time, so I have some idea.
Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
I made a mistake.
Yeah,
there. I
you're
wasn't
good.
on there.
I'm feeling okay.
We'll give you a few extra seconds,
Yeah, that's
too.
okay. So anyway, I just to say that I have some insight into what you guys are working on, particularly with budgets and things, but wanted to talk with you. My wife and I own Flex Fitness Center at 475 Century Lane. We also own the real estate there. We're set to have our 35th anniversary in August, which is amazing for a little meathead weightlifting gym, right? It's a pretty historic run that we're on. It's pretty awesome. So I just wanted to give you guys a little insight into that as a business owner. So we were given on March 16, we were given 3.5 hours notice to close that business. People didn't even know. We had to physically remove people from the building and lock the doors and put a sign on it and walk away. We've cried a lot. That's an amazing thing to do. you know, to work that hard on that business and lock the doors and walk away. That's a hell of a thing. Anyway, so we've been closed now for 8 weeks. I expect we're gonna be closed at least another 4, at minimum. Nobody really knows what's gonna happen when we open again. We know from folks in other states, we can kind of expect some sort of roll-in, something like you're hearing about with restaurants, but certainly revenue won't be what it's supposed to be. So with that, just to throw a little numbers to that, on a historic basis, Flex will have about 2 weeks of revenue at this time of year would be about equivalent to our annual profitability. So presently, we're closed 8 weeks, so it's gonna take us about 4 years to dig out of that hole. 2 more years if we're closed for another month. We did get PPP loans and all that stuff. That's not all it's cracked up to be. It's not even tax deductible. It's a loan. It's gonna help us out maybe equivalent of a week. Anyway, when you run a business for that long, you get really good at managing and projecting cash flow. And one of the things that I see on our cash flow horizon is 90 days out. It's our property tax bill, right? Gonna be in August, and you guys are working on the budget, I understand. So, but I also remember when we first started the business and we couldn't pay the property tax on time, which are gonna have a lot of people in that position this year. And when you get in that kind of spot, and I'm sure you've all been in a spot where you can't pay a bill, and then you get late fees, and then you get stuff starts to stack up on you, and then you become afraid of that. Do you communicate to that people? You know, you see a letter in the mail, and your heart skips a beat, and it really screws up that relationship. So what I'd like to propose is, you know, I mean, I'd love, you know, magic money, but I also understand you have a government, you know, you have a budget and things to work on. But if what I'm suggesting is that those businesses that are shuttered, you know who they are, you have that record. I'm suggesting you consider something like putting a proactive plan in place for August, that if a business is shuttered for an extended period, that they are able to pay what they can in August. That doesn't trigger for them a whole bunch of late fees and things that start stacking on itself. And then perhaps if you put in place proactively at that time 6 months of payments between there and February would catch you up to the revenue that you're expecting for that location by the February date of the next payment. It's exact 6 months, right? September, October, November, December, and February. And then let that payer, you know, that business have a pretty good idea, you know, what they're dealing with, and have a proactive, positive conversation on the front end of that instead of mounting up. You lose your late fees and that sort of thing, but that's not in your budget anyway, right? So, and it might change the relationship. At least it'd be a nice gesture. It might change the relationship, and it might help people to stay on a payment schedule and maybe get you the revenue that you need, and have them feel good about what they're doing in their communication with the city in the meantime. So my light's turned yellow. That means I'm running out of time. I'm not hard to find. If anybody wants to talk about that idea or any other ideas, I'd be happy to, but appreciate the time. Thanks, man. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here who would like to address council at this time? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment period for in-person comments. And Kathy, I believe that we've received some email comments this week as well. Could you give us a quick summary of those? Those will all be accepted into the record at item 9 on the budget. But just an idea of what the topic was, the number of them, and whether they came from residents or from others.
Mayor, we've received 21 public comments addressing the community energy plan, which are included in the packet. We do request that people make public comment and state their address. Of the 21 respondents, 10 reside within the city and 11 are outside the city.
Great, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, item 7A, public hearing tax abatement for Grand Haven Stamping Products Incorporated, 701 Waverly Road. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm gonna do everything on this item tonight. and I hope that's okay. Let me lean in here. We were requested and advised both the applicant and Lakeshore Advantage that typically would be here at this point in time, that concerning the pandemic and things that we're going through, that we did not feel that it was necessary for them to attend. You will note in your packet that there is a letter from the CFO from the company, and I would encourage you that if you didn't read that, that you do. Really highlights who they are as a regional company, and I think it also leads into what we would like to say as a city of how happy we are that we are able to not only put such, an important parcel back to use in the city. For those that are unaware, this is what was known historically as the Prince Tech Center, and it's gone through a lot of different changes, and it's a very large facility that, quite frankly, Tim and myself and the assessing staff were kind of wondering, like, okay, what's going to be the future of this? And to have GHSP locate here, repurpose this key property, but quite frankly, move their global headquarters to this location is really just a fantastic result, I think. Also, you'll see in that letter, and I would encourage you actually to go out and maybe Google, because there's been some stories about this. They are currently in the news because they just launched a very successful UV light product that takes a look at battling the COVID-19 virus. So I think that's a very timely, kind of side story there too. But this is a very well entrenched company, very respected company. Quite frankly, we're really excited that they're moving into Holland. They still have a presence certainly in Grand Haven, but so in the application, you'll see ultimately that there are 250 jobs that they are transferring into the city, and they expect 29 new jobs, and all of those jobs are very well compensated and benefited. I think the note said $75,000 and up, so very much a very solid company and very solid employer. Getting now to more the typical things that I would report to you all on. Remember, I bore you and I say, okay, look at the calculation, because there's a lot of misunderstanding quite often with how these tax abatements work. In this particular instance, they are making $6 million roughly of real property improvements, which would be defined as changes to the building. So they're making upgrades and various investments. And the way then the abatement works is that on that $6 million, you take the $6 million, you cut it in half because we only make taxes on half of the value of a property. And then over 12 years, they pay 50% of the taxes on that new investment, and they get an abatement on the other 50%. So we are projecting that over the 12 years, they will pay $1.1 million in taxes to all the taxing entities that we collect for if this project didn't move forward. But then also, in return, they are getting an abated total value of the same $1.1 million over the 12 years. Beyond that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions. And again, we think that this is exactly the type of project that this abatement program is in place for, and recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Van Beek. Now we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in regard to this tax abatement? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. What is the pleasure of council?
Move we adopt the recommendation.
Moved by Hoekstra,
Support.
support by Trethewey. Is there any discussion? Yes, Mr. Hoekstra.
Just a couple of comments. First of all, as Keith has said, just the very fact that there's activity going on at this location is a huge, huge thing, and I'm sure there are many sighs issued throughout City Hall about that. Also typically, as Keith has alluded to as well, we have gotten into the habit of inquiring about the return on investment, so to speak, on jobs created or retained, and the level of, sorry, my nose keeps getting exposed. Number of jobs that are created or retained, and the amount of investment put back into the community as a result of those salaries. And Keith, I thank you for highlighting that. If you look at the amount of tax savings per year proposed just for the city, you know, even one of those positions at the rate of pay that you gave an example of, you know, is roughly 3 times as much as the tax savings. So I would say, I mean, it's obvious even to someone like me who's number challenged, that rate of return on investment is incredible. So I'm glad to see this, coming about, and I fully support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoekstra. Any other comments from council? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Peters?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Trethewey?
Yes.
Arnsworst?
Yes.
Corbin?
Yes.
Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Byrd?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item is item 7B, public hearing, finance proposed City of Holland fiscal year 2021 budget. Mr. Van Beek?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. Tim Vogley is here to answer any detailed questions that may come up. And you all will recall being in this room not so long ago where we did a lengthy presentation and review of this entire budget. So my intent is not to review all of that, but I think it's appropriate as we go into a public hearing to just give some highlights. First of all, just again, I can't say it enough, thank you to our incredible team led by Tim and Michelle Price in finance. Creating a 469-page document, I think have that right, is not a small task, especially as they completed that process in the middle of this pandemic. And then I hope that you all sensed also as the department heads rolled through and talked about, even though in abbreviated fashion, how excited they are that the work that they do every day, and additionally how they are excited and we feel that it is a budget that delivers on the conversations that we've had with the community, but more importantly, the council goals that you all set for us. So with that, I'm going to go through some things relatively quickly. First, just because everything is kind of overtaken, it seems like, by COVID right now, let's talk about immediate impacts on revenue. Our property taxes, again, in the year that we're in, are already collected. So those are relatively stable, and revenue sharing is a point that definitely we are expecting a significant impact yet in the fiscal year that we're in. The BPW transfer is a rolling 3-year average, so even though they've had a significant, Dave can get into the details if you have questions about that lowering in use, that's a 3-year average, so we don't expect an immediate or a significant increase there. Permits and fees, we've had a 2-month shutdown basically, so obviously we've had some hits there. Act 51 road funding is where we expect an immediate, but more importantly, a long-term impact. For expenditures, those first 4, obviously there's impacts. We're still evaluating that as the gentleman talked. We certainly have payroll impacts. The ones that are most significant because they're more enterprise fund type situations are our Civic Center and Windmill Island. As we talked about in the study session, though, what we're most concerned about is the long-term financial impact of what we've gone through. Pension liabilities, I think, just happens to be at the top of the list, but while this was already increasing and we were making very good progress and paying that down and kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. We're expecting that with some bad news we were already expecting, this is going to make it even worse. So there's definitely concern multi-fiscal years out that that's going to catch up with us a little bit. We've learned in property values from the Great Recession that we lag everyone else. So we may not have that hit immediately in values, but the way that the municipal system works is that we may see those values come down more over a course of years potentially. And unfortunately, the way the rules are set up, you know, we have just been getting back to pre-Great Recession levels. So when they drop much faster than we can ever recover them. So that is, again, one of those areas where there is significant long-term financial concern. Revenue sharing, it's not just immediate, but it's ongoing. I've heard, 40, 60% type cut estimates from other local communities, and that's a significant portion of our budget, between 15 and 20%. Employment rate and BPW transfer, we'll just have to watch how that goes. As we talked about, anyone that says they know what is going to be true a month from now, 2 months from now, 2 years from now, I don't believe them. So there's just a lot of uncertainty yet. So what we tried to do in this budget is not guess, but rather, as I go to the next slide, Tim did a great job of talking about that we always amend our budgets, but we fully expect that the budget that we're recommending that you adopt tonight is one of those budgets that we're going to go in, we're going to make presentations to you as council more frequently, and we don't get to amend the budget. You guys amend the budget. So we're going to have those conversations. We're certainly going to do our best to identify potential problems, potential opportunities, and make recommendations of what we think you should do as it relates to budget amendments. But again, that's the process that we're recommending that you manage as we go through this next year. Now, setting COVID aside, kind of what we'd otherwise like to celebrate is that we think it is a budget that does deliver. We're really excited about this budget. We think that not only if you take a look at goals that were set and kind of maintained from prior years, there's definitely a long-term focus of growing the tax base, and think about the significant input of time and money and process and community involvement that we had with Waterfront Holland over the course of more than a year. Even though that seems stalled right now, I'll tell you that even in the midst of all of this, we hear stories about and we hear hope of people that want to take concepts in Waterfront Holland and invest again. So we're excited about that. We were really starting to take a look at and making progress on funding in our municipal capital improvement fund. I talked already about our pension, that we were being able to make additional payments towards that and starting to see kind of the end of the tunnel there. We continue to build relationships and partnerships, and quite frankly, I'll tell you that in the midst of all of this, if anything, we've leaned into that even more. Strategically utilized funding from the Holland Board of Public Works. Not only have we used that as it relates to capital improvement fund, community energy plan, which I'll talk about shortly, but also very much in regional initiatives. So we've maintained what I believe were long-term goals and continue to be goals of council. But we've also identified and made very strategic investments in emerging goals or new goals that council has identified. And I think they're really emerging goals. I don't think there was anything new. It was just a stronger investment in some of these areas. So housing policy, I think there were a variety of things, but what I highlighted is the new assistant city manager position that is split partly between economic development and abatements and all those types of programs that we do to really target the type of development and projects that we want, and very much involved in that is housing policy. But also that extends to the community energy plan, where half of that position also is really that high-level, leadership-level position that pays attention to those two top priorities. In the community energy plan, but specifically I'm going to talk about the Holland Energy Fund next after the first public hearing, but there were many investments that we organized all in one place, but that we made new investments. The differential in hybrid vehicle costs, an additional investment in community education so that we could talk about sustainability more broadly. And then also the city's investment in the renewable energy premium to make sure that we're not just paying the base rate, but that we're paying the additional energy premium that the BPW makes available, and I'll plug for everybody that they can pay. And then that money specifically goes to further expand the renewable portfolio of the Holland Board of Public Works. Sorry, it's hard to breathe through this thing, I tell you. So, and that's not all, but we certainly identified that as a strategic investment. I think that you saw, we're certainly excited that when Jennifer talked about HR priorities, when Downtown Group talked about the principal shopping district, when Chief Messer talks about the variety of things that he's involved with, and then Esther talks about the partnerships that we've really leaned into and are encouraging, certainly continue and strengthen our efforts in DEI, and engage with residents. I think that was in a variety of spots, but particularly in the council budget, talking about the Leadership Academy option and also the engagement software. So again, we're excited about this budget, and that is the extent of my presentation on the large budgets. Again, the Holland Energy Fund will come up after this. And between myself and Tim and also Dave Koster, because his budgets are rolled into here, we're able to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Beek. At this point then, I will open the public hearing in regard to the proposed City of Holland fiscal year 2021 budget. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in regard to the fiscal 2021 budget in the public hearing? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. What is the pleasure of council?
Motion to adopt recommendation.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Byrd. Discussion. Yes, Mr. Trethewey.
It was reiterated 2 weeks ago. It was talked about 2 weeks ago, but I just want to bring it up again. Staff did a fantastic job in understanding, listening to us, trying to figure out what we were saying. I think this budget reflects it in all the high priorities. Everybody in this room, Kathy and Matt, Keith, Dave, and of course our fantastic finance director, and all the staff that supports that. This has been probably one of the, because of the time specifically, but this has probably been one of the better presentations and better put together budgets. They're all good. I'm a numbers guy. I take over for Dave every once in a while there. But and Sean when he was up here too. So, but I'm extremely proud of the group that put this together, and extremely proud to go through the next year with this budget, specifically because of the unknowns. And I think we have, as was stated earlier, we have some great flexibility in here to keep the City of Holland afloat. We have for a number of years. We've gone through some tough times, and we're going to come through some more tough times, but we've always come through very, very well, come through on top. So my appreciation to all the staff that put this together, and specifically you, Mr. Mindy.
Thank you.
Any
I'll
other
spread the word.
comments from council? Yes,
Nikki.
Nikki.
Yes, and I agree with that assessment. I feel very comfortable with what's in this budget, and I will say that the staff has kept the city together. I think I said financially, organizationally, and existentially. You know, we're here because you worked 24/7 for a long time, and it's not over. That being said, judging from the number of emails that came in, the word, while all our, so you have the finances and then you have the visions of council. And while I think that's in this budget, I don't think that citizens are aware of all that. They're not necessarily aware that we continue to work on LGBT or diversity. And affordable housing is more obvious, and there's a couple of things in the Planning Commission pipeline now for that. But the community energy plan, and now it's climate change, which are related, but again, can be addressed separately. And I don't think that knowledge is out there, what is happening. I think it's a little, it kind of grew up. There was, and see, I don't know the whole history. This is another thing I need to know. In 2011, I believe, was when it was developed, and a lot of excitement, and so that's almost 10 years ago, and so you create a lot of committees and all this kind of stuff. And is that the way to go? Sometimes you have to look at it, tidy it up, explain it, and get the word out again. There is a lot going on. We make a lot of progress, but apparently, you know, I don't know if it's marketing or if it's on, you know, there's a lot, and of course, COVID makes a big difference. But the word needs to get out there, and what do we need to do now about that? Do we need to jumpstart it? I'm very happy to hear about the second assistant city manager position, and with half of that, maybe, I'm sure it'll kind of vary depending on the agendas at different times, but I'm glad to hear that's half is sustainability, which I'm hoping is part of this energy, climate change, blah, 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 you know, that kind of stuff, reducing our carbon emissions. So that'll be a big step to have someone devoted to that instead of all volunteer, as it usually is. So I'm interested in hearing what my fellow council members hear about that. Do we need to have a study session on this? Do we need to present something in the future? There has to be something concrete instead of just saying, people, really, we're on it. Take my word for it, because that's, it doesn't, you want to walk the talk, I think, is what the expression is.
Thank you. Yes, Dave.
Nikki, to your point, I hope to speak to that a little later on in the meeting, so stay tuned to that, if you will.
Great.
Also, to add to Brother Mike's comments, I think this is probably one of the shortest budget presentations we've ever had as well. A certain city manager in the past who remained unnamed, we used to take guesses. I can't say bets because money was never exchanged about how long the presentation would be, and he always went longer than what I expected. But so anyway, thank you for your brevity as well.
Thanks, Dave. Anyone else? Yes, Quincy.
I guess from what Nikki said, I guess I'm trying to understand what you were, not what you're saying, but what you're asking.
Okay. And is this, and David, you, Councilmember Hoekstra, you said you would talk about, is this the proper place to talk about this?
Yeah, and one thing, as it relates to the community energy plan, I've kind of held, because there's one thing in the Holland Energy Fund, that's probably where there's money. So just so you know,
Yes.
I don't want to stifle conversation at all,
No.
but just so you know that I have comments definitely directed at that in the Holland Energy Fund budget.
Well, okay, well, I am looking, when all these letters come in, and I understand, you know, fewer than half seem to be actually from the city of Holland, it seems. There is some interest, and you want to address that interest. There is a lot going on, and you've got, it's in the plan. I mean, there is money set aside for energy and climate change and our visions. What I'm saying is, judging from the letters, I mean, we can't do, we can't take a resolution that someone gives us and say, okay, can you pass it? No, there's a different process. But somehow the work that is being done is not known. It's not out there to this population. And I don't think it's just this group. I think it's a general interest. There's a general interest in our changing world and energy reduction and reducing carbon emissions and along that line. So I'm just wondering, that's a question to my mind. The budget, I think, is a fine budget. I have no problems with the budget, and thank you all again. But, when people have questions and they're saying, okay, I mean, what is not happening?
Yeah. Mike?
Okay, thank you.
Is that any clearer?
Yep.
Clear as mud?
If I might help, Nikki,
Mm-hmm.
I hear what you're saying, but I also hear a misperception. And you alluded to it just a little bit, to the fact that we're not, or what you read into the letters is that we're not doing anything. I don't think that's any further from the truth. I
agree.
I think what has happened, and maybe, and we had a number of discussions during Coffee with Council with a number of people. I'm a man of my word. I said we would have discussions about it, or we would bring it up throughout, and that's what's gonna happen. The crux, I think, of all the letters is that, okay, this was done X number of years ago. We had X number of years worth of stuff. The paradigm has shifted. Times have changed. It's time to look at it again and see if it's still practical, if it still meets our mission, if it meets our needs, or does it have to be tweaked a little bit? And that's the discussion that we have to have. I don't think that we saw anything here that anybody didn't think we were doing anything, but is it time to reevaluate what had been done? And I agree, it's time to have that conversation. Is it, and I have no idea where that's gonna end up. I'm not gonna try to say one way or the other. Are we gonna keep on the same path we are? It's good. Do we need to tweak it a little bit? Whatever the case may be, we need to get that information. Yes, the conversation will be had. That's what I read from those letters. I hope that helps. It's just my interpretation, so.
Yes. And all that is in the budget. I just wonder why now? Why are these letters asking now with the budget? And maybe it's with the BPW budget. Maybe it's more applicable to that. But so if they want that tweaked, and I get that, why is it now with the budget? Then since all this energy and the funding is in the budget related to that, that's what I'm not getting. That's the disconnect I'm getting.
Yeah, Jay?
As we talk about this, it strikes me that I think there's only 3 of us up here that were neck deep in bringing this community energy plan to the table, and the enthusiasm and the commitment and the excitement that was spawned during all that. That was 10 years ago. So there's 6 people up here that really weren't part of that. So I do think there's a really good case for sooner rather than later sitting down and digging into this stuff. What I read in the letters and all the emails I've received, whether they live in Holland or Holland Township or Park Township, I would consider them all legitimate. What I'm reading is they have some very specific notions that might involve more budgetary considerations than what we've talked about so far. Namely, I think there's a concern among a lot of the people that have brought this project forward that the timeline has to change. It's not getting down to 10 by 50. It's maybe trying to get down to 0 or 40. Nonetheless, looking at it and saying, the timeline we have, this thing about getting us to 10 at 50 is no longer relevant. That's specifically in their letter, that's what they're asking about. Now, how do we do that? To me, that's a policy question. That's a direction that has to come from this body to us, because we own the community energy plan, as I see it. They also have a lot of great questions in there. One of the emails I got was from Dave and Weiland from the Sciences at Hope saying, we will come in. How do we have a conversation about changing the direction of the community energy plan when maybe we have the right, when I look at our governance policy, well, we do our job of visioning and creating direction. It clearly states in there that we can bring in people. We can bring in experts to help us learn from each other, and maybe if we do that, we might come away with a little different sense of commitment to changing the timeline. So it's astounding to me how much effort and time, ever since we started our Saturday morning meet council, I can't think of the name of it. Coffee Council. There is a huge amount of commitment in this community, and they've been in these rooms. We've done all these things. I don't think anybody has responded to them, and I think that's part of it too. And I don't know why. I'm so glad, and part of my frustration has been, I've been waiting for a long time for the community energy plan to be a priority. Here it is. And now we're getting letters with some very specific and I think very reasonable questions about what are you going to do and how are we going to do it and what has to be tweaked. So
I disagree.
think that's kind of what you're saying, Nikki, is why are they doing it now? I think they're saying, we're throwing, in my mind, a relatively small amount of money at something that if we all came together and said, paint the vision and say, staff, here's where we want to go. If we did that, it might cost more. So I don't know. I don't know the answer. Again, we haven't talked about it. So I'm looking forward to a long discussion about a recommitment and maybe a reassessment of us. And say maybe the six new people are saying, I don't know, it was fun, it was 10 years. I'm good with 10 and 50. Well, let's find that out. Let's have that discussion so we can give the staff the direction they need to move forward. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. I disagree that they haven't been heard, Jay. This came as one of the top priorities from this council at our advance.
Oh, agreed.
And we have asked staff to address it. There are specific dollars in the budget, and there's a process that was put together 10 years ago to reevaluate the community energy plan periodically, and that's set to start. There's a strategic development team that's going to be meeting and going to be investigating these questions. We as a body do set the policy here, but we also have boards and commissions and other groups that do a lot of that legwork on our behalf, because there isn't a way that this council can address every single issue in a level of detail that I think a lot of us would love to be able to do, but it ended up being more than a full-time job for all of us to be able to do that. So we've got a strategic development team that's going to be meeting, that's going to be looking at reevaluating the community energy plan. And as I read through those emails, I looked and I said, well, a lot of the things that they're asking for are built into the process that got us to be the greenest city in the state of Michigan. And I think that there is a commitment on behalf of this council to continue that and to reevaluate what makes sense for us to do. So I agree with you that this is a top priority of this council. I disagree with the fact that this group hasn't been heard. I think that they very much have been heard, and I think that that's built into the budget and into the process to be able to continue down that road, because I would love to see us continue to be the greenest city in the state of Michigan for my full tenure on council. Any other comments? Yes, Lynn.
Yeah, I actually think this is a perfect opportunity to re-energize the community energy plan and the conversation around sustainability, because the staff has given us some funding and a person to address it. And the community has given us some really significant guidance that you mentioned on how we might be able to engage with them and to gather really important information from them to move forward. So I think, and I think that when I mentioned this the last time we were talking about it, would love to be able to have a conversation and to have some input into the direction of that sustainability piece. And hopefully, as soon as we can, maybe the second study session that we can have is about this. The first one, we want to get back to our question of anti-discrimination, but we certainly want to do this one right on the heels of that, I think, because this is a perfect opportunity for us to begin that conversation again.
Other comments? Yeah, Raul.
Yeah, just a couple kind of broad comments about the overall budget and the process. Just again, kudos to you guys, because this was one of the budgets. I mean, it's my third round, I think. Looking at these, and it was a budget that was easy to ingest. I mean, just to be able to see these priorities laid out in the various parts of the budget as you guys presented, and it gives us confidence, gives me confidence, and that we're being heard. And I hopefully also that the citizens, who have been speaking up over the course of this past year, who really highlighted these priorities for the city, that we heard, that we addressed, that now are part of this upcoming year. They're being heard, and things are being addressed, and we still have a journey ahead of us, and this is a unique year, unique season, and the fact that you were able to put this together the way that you did, with that in light, we still have a lot of interesting times ahead of us. So we'll see how all of this plays out, but great presentation, great budget. Love what we're a part of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Maybe that will help get the word out. We do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, Keith.
Yeah, and thank you for that feedback. That's something that we always struggle with, right? Is like, how do we more and more spread the word of all the things that we're doing, because there's so much stuff that we're doing. And I think I've shared with some of you, quite frankly, you guys are our best ambassadors. So it's our responsibility too, where if there's something that that we're doing and somehow it's being lost in translation, please let us know. We want to be able to equip you so you can do that work. Lynn, I will say, and it's kind of weird, maybe I should have addressed some of this, but again, I'll talk about the community energy plan and when we talk about the Holland Energy Fund in a moment in that SDT process, because I really look forward to highlighting that for you. But that position, of course, that's going to be interesting, and I'm just going to identify that for you. Because of everything that's going on right now, would I recommend hiring it full-time right away? Like, there's a lot of stuff to unpack and all of that I do have some ideas and maybe some opportunities there that I'm excited about talking through with you, depending on how things go. That's a person that will be part of those conversations, but as it relates to the community energy plan, I really think of it like they're going to be one of the leads from city staff to be part of those conversations. But it's so important that they're part of a larger coalition of people that are having those conversations. But certainly one thing that we want to do is that within, as I think of it, the city organization, the things that we're doing within the departments and in our facilities. We've made a multi-million-dollar investment already in our facilities as it relates to sustainability. We definitely want that person to be the lead within the organization in that sense to really do all those things. So I'm excited about that opportunity. I'm not quite as excited as I was before just because of everything's going on. So what exactly that emerges to be, we'll figure out together. But yes, it does very much speak to our commitment, I think.
Any other comments from council? I just also wanted to echo the comments. Thank you, Keith. Thank you to all of the staff for working so hard on putting this together. And as somebody who's not a numbers guy like Mike, I thank you for the brevity of the report as well. Sometimes those reports can be longer than they need to be, and I think this one definitely hit the sweet spot. Now, this was my first time going through this process. As an insider, I've watched the process from outside. And from when we started this process with the coffees with council and with the advance, we came out with very, very specific priorities and goals for you, and highlighted those and numerically told you what we wanted. And the four that came out, not necessarily in this order in my mind, were the community energy plan and affordable housing and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And separate from diversity, equity, and inclusion was the LGBTQ plus issue in the Non-Discrimination Ordinance. And I have seen all of those things, well, most of those things, included in this budget, even though there are some things that may not necessarily be able to be put in terms of a line item. As we've talked about with the community energy plan, very happy to see that one half of that new position, whatever that happens to be, the goal is, if we were able to keep this budget and keep the funding, is that we're putting all of that sustainability stuff, not only under one roof and in one office, but with somebody who is charged with coordinating that so that it's not spread out. And the fact that we are going to be reevaluating that community energy plan so that we've got a group of community members who are interested in this, who are going to be getting the information, and I know that'll be coming in the next line item here, which in my simple brain, I combine all of those things together as part of that budget, even though I know that we've got to separate them out, that there are dollars there for consultants and for experts and for information to come in, so that group can come back to us and say, here's what it is that we can do. Here's what it is that we recommend that you should do. And here's what it's going to cost. Because there's a key component of that is, what is the cost of doing this? You know, I don't want to set a goal that's going to cost us $1 billion to be able to achieve. I don't want to just set goals. I want to do things. And I think that this budget and this plan helps us down that road. In regard to affordable housing, we said definitely that is something that we want to do, and making sure that new assistant city manager position is also dealing with that. And I think that sustainability and the affordable housing piece are interconnected with one another. And if we get the right person in there, I think we're going to be doing a whole lot of really good things for this community with those two key priorities. And when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, what I heard from staff and what we heard from the board reports was, while yes, that budget is increasing, the dollars aren't necessarily as important as attitude and actions. And one thing that I've seen from this council is the attitude of, we definitely want to do something with this. We want this to be systemic, and we want to make sure that we are out there and engaged in the community and all sectors of the community, so that we are reaching everyone who calls Holland their home. And in regard to the non-discrimination ordinance, this is probably the one where it's the hardest to be able to pinpoint a line item in the budget. But we were well on our way in this process when we got hit with the pandemic. And this was a very, very public process, and a process that involves, and I think necessarily involves, a lot of engagement from the public. And we made the decision to push the pause button on that one, partly, in my mind, in response to discussions with the key players who said, we would like to be able to be here for public comment periods, but we just don't feel safe doing that at this point. That issue, in my mind and in the minds of, I think, the members of this table, has not gone away. It's something that we are ready to re-engage in. I'm still willing, personally, to be able to keep that pause button pushed until we've got the ability to have people come in here and be able to speak to us publicly. I may change my mind if we get another 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks down the road with this and say we need to be doing more with this. But right now, I think that the value of waiting outweighs, and waiting and allowing people to be engaged with this process outweighs the necessity of speed that's going on. So I want to thank you again for the first time through this process. This was a big learning curve. But believe it or not, for somebody who doesn't really like budgets that much, it was actually a fairly pleasurable process. And for the person who may have been as involved in the process as any person who's not on staff, because I found myself here in City Hall quite often, it was an honor and a privilege to watch your staff work to be able to get this put together, and I'm including you in that process as well. I think that our goals and our priorities are addressed in this budget. And while COVID-19 brings all kinds of uncertainty to this budget, if we could pull COVID-19 and all of that uncertainty out of the picture, I think that this budget is the best budget that we can possibly do for the city of Holland. I know we're going to be making changes. I know we're going to be making amendments, to this budget, but I think that this is where we're headed. And so with that, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Garcia,
Yes.
Trethewey,
Yes.
Arsworst,
Yes.
Corbin,
Yes.
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Byrd,
Yes.
Peters,
Yep.
Mayor Boggs.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item, item 7C, public hearing, Holland Energy Fund 2021 budget for public hearing and approval. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. We kind of snuck forward in this, so I'm eager to talk about this. And I'm also going to ask Dave, especially with some of the comments that were made in a moment, I'm going to ask Dave to come up also. So the Holland Energy Fund, again, is this nonprofit that we've set up. And originally it was set up for a lot of different reasons, but especially if you, so sources of $427,000 total, okay? Let's talk about uses. So you have the home energy retrofit program, which if you recall in the budget presentation, in particular has two different things going on. It has the traditional, we've been doing it for a while, efforts to encourage home energy retrofits, but we were starting to see a little bit of a slowdown in all of that. So I think the team, and when I say the team, it's the Holland Energy Fund, Dave sits on that, and then we have other people, so between the BPW and the city, there's really an exciting, I think they call it the SEAL team, right, Tim? So we're excited about kind of a targeted way to reinvigorate that, and that's a pilot this year, so there's specific money there. The on-bill program, loan program, we're still, I believe, the only city in Michigan that has that, so that's a very innovative, great program. We love that. The last thing I'm going to speak on here, and it's going to take a little bit of a time, is the community energy plan. So you'll see a line item there. The $60,700 is kind of traditional support that we have for a variety of things, education and various consultancies to make sure that we're still moving the ball forward. But in particular, there's a new line item here. It's for $100,000, and it highlights something that maybe we haven't been communicating well enough, but since I've been here, we've talked about the community energy plan, and I know there's been comments made of the original adoption, but we've already gone through one iteration of it wasn't the community energy plan, and nothing's happened since then. I would say two things. One, the initial community energy plan had interim goals and strategies, and then what happened is that was revisited by was called, and what we're proposing to start again, and we've been talking about this, and this is where that $100,000 comes in, is that we would reinitiate that strategic development team here yet in this remainder of this calendar year. So we're eager to get that process started. That strategic development team involves the community. It had a Hope College, I'm gonna let Dave talk about all the representatives, but it has public involvement, it has institution involvement, it certainly has council involvement, it has BPW board involvement, and then staff's involvement and support. So we're eager to replicate that process that's already been done once since the community energy plan was initially adopted. And what that does then is it takes a look at inputs and data and information, and then it pokes and prods the community energy plan, and it says, okay, what new ideas do we have? What new goals do we want to set for ourselves? But they're informed. It's iterative is what I would call it, where it says, okay, to reach this goal, what does that mean? What would we have to do? We have a consultant that helps us, say what the realities there are, the cost that's involved, the ability to achieve those things, because there's a lot of other outside limiting factors, state law and the like. So we're eager and excited about starting that process. And right there, and I know it's hard to pull out of a 469-page budget and another one, right? But That's where $100,000 is there for a consultant to support that process, but more importantly, that we're going to start that process again. I have not lived through the strategic development team. Now, we are currently, and so all those tactics, when they're made, that's part of a tactic team that continually works on new things. And quite frankly, a lot of the things that you see in the budget that you adopted earlier are things that came out of those tactic teams that said, hey, we're moving this forward, so now let's take these actions. But what I'd really love to do, and I think I saw someone spray this down, Dave's lived through this strategic development team formulation and process, so I'd like him to speak to it much better than what I could.
I know you did a pretty good job, Keith. Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. I don't know if I can really add a whole lot to that, but I'll try just to kind of give a little bit of history. And as Councilman Peters mentioned, there's 3 of you that were here when the Community Energy Plan was adopted by this body. It was a very intensive process, a good community process to bring a strategy document forward. And it's called a plan, but really it is a strategy document. What was outlined in that was a lot of possible ways that we could go to help, reduce our carbon intensity in our community. And they were fairly big ideas and some big, bold kind of projects and initiatives in there. And what we decided to do when the original plan was launched, there were about 7 different task forces that originally got started. And that's where on-bill financing and, in fact, there was another one called building labeling at the same time, where now we have when people do an upgrade, they have a way of being able to market that in their own house, that there's been a very significant improvement there. Those all came out of those task forces. What our generation portfolio changes were going to be was a big part of that, where we did the sustainable return on investment around that same time. And because of that, now we've got, our generation portfolio is 43% more or is less carbon intense than it was prior to that time frame. So big strides been made there. I think, Keith mentioned the on-bill program is the only one in the state of Michigan. We led the initiative in here in Holland to, with the help of Representative Haveman, to get that legislation passed so that we could actually enact that and make use of a loan that could get repaid on an electric bill. And I'll tell you, when I look around the country, I think even though we're struggling to keep the momentum going on that, per capita, we've got by far the most participation in the country as it relates to an on-bill and a home energy retrofit program. So, there's a lot to be really proud of in terms of the first phases of that effort. Around the time that Holland Energy Park got done, which is obviously a big investment for the community in 2017, we were reaching a point where those strategies had been investigated that were the original 7. A lot of things had become operationalized. Some did not pass the test of evaluation of being a worthwhile investment, like district heating, for example, was studied pretty intensely, but because of the low price of natural gas and the capital infrastructure that would have to be put in, there really was not a great business case for that at the time. So that, again, all these things were evaluated. Some moved into operational mode, some did not. What we needed to do then was really to kind of step back, and so this whole community energy plan process involves a revisit on a periodic basis. And there's a group, as Keith mentioned, the strategic development team was launched sometime around probably 2016, 2017, probably 2017 is more of the time frame. They looked at what had been done, how much had we spent to get where we are at this point, how much carbon had we saved in the initiatives that we were working on, how much was expected to save, what's out there available for us given kind of the state of technology in the world and all the things that maybe are some new strategies that we could look at. So that group, and it was a very wide cross-section, council representation was on there, BPW board representation was on there, staff supported, and 2 at-large members of the community, and Hope College was also on that group. And the idea was to look at, again, that past and then future, what we could do to grow that. And I'll tell you that this time, what we did is we brought those recommendations back to this council in February of 2018 with a review of what we'd done and promoting what we think as SDT, promoting what the strategies ought to be going forward. And so that's what we've been working on. The tactic teams now are really addressing those things. And one of the things primarily is we saw that more than 20% of our carbon intensity for the community was based upon transportation, but the original 7 strategies hadn't really even investigated transportation. So, with electric vehicles becoming more prevalent, what kind of incentivizing can we do there? How can we look at changing some of our vehicles within our fleet to, again, I think the discussion was walking the talk. We wanted to do that first as it related to looking at putting in hybrid technology to avoid idling, maybe more electric vehicle in our fleet in general. So then we could go to the schools and go to the MACs and go to others and say, here's what we've learned about it, and can we promote it on the next phase of that initiative. So those are some of the strategies. Education is one that we kind of floundered along on, didn't really kind of, and I think that was talked about as well. How well do people know about what we're doing? We're asking that question too. The BPW recently surveyed the result of residential and business awareness, at least as it relates to the BPW being a leader in sustainability. I'll tell you that over 90% of our businesses identified on a scale of 1 to 10, 7 or higher, in terms of the BPW being a leader. So I think our businesses maybe have more awareness. The residential, that number was about 65%. So we've got some work to do maybe on the residential side in terms of either becoming a leader to where they want us to be, or letting them know what we're doing and to a point where they would recognize the efforts that have been going on. So, but again, that SDT process brought those recommendations back to this group. I think there was a lot of excitement about the progress that had been done up to that point, and we set interim goals in mind for 2021. And now the steering committee then, which is another element of the community energy plan, manages that process through the tactic teams that are working on really kind of a 4-step process where they, research, and then they plan, and then they pilot, and then they eventually operationalize something and make a recommendation for that. And so that's ongoing right now. Matter of fact, June 4 is our next CEP steering committee meeting. There are public meetings. So we've had, public engagement and participation in that from time to time as well. So it is a robust plan in that it has different mechanisms in it to bring it back and refresh it and to present new ideas and strategies to this council. And as Jay mentioned, you own it. You made that head nod in February of 2018 saying, yeah, these good strategies, and we appreciate the work that's been done. And I think this SDT process, again, envisions doing that same thing, and that's what we're looking at launching. So.
Thank you, Dave.
So with that, that's our presentation for this Holland Energy Fund budget. And again, I understand, right, it's a little weird. So the Holland Energy Fund, it's just one line item here where we talked a lot about the community energy plan. But again, this is a fund for the Holland Energy Fund as presented, and we would recommend approval.
Thank you. With that, I will open the public hearing. This is the public hearing for the Holland Energy Fund 2021 budget. Is there anyone here to speak at the public hearing? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. What is the pleasure of council?
Move we approve the recommendation?
Moved by Hoekstra.
Support.
Support by, was that you, Mike? Trethewey?
Whoever.
It's hard to tell with the masks on. I'll give it to Trethewey. Any discussion by council? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Trethewey?
Yes.
Arnshorst?
Yes.
Corbin? Yes. Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Byrd?
Yes.
Peters? Garcia?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item, 7D, receive emergency action 2020-3 under the City of Holland local state of emergency. Mr. Van Beek?
Yes, I'm going to try to not make eye contact with Councilmember Trethewey here, but this is what we expect, quite frankly, to be the last emergency action. You'll notice there were only 3 of them. This basically just because we were able to finish the spring cleanup actions, but we also did not, unfortunately, have Tulip time this year. We just moved up the on-street parking that otherwise would have been taking place in 2 days. So we just moved that up. It's not a long-term, it was just a one-time thing. And again, so that's what we're just informing you of, so you would receive that. And I will let you know also, you may or may not realize or have noticed that this would otherwise be where the local declaration of emergency that you adopted and we described and kind of referenced every time you did one of those emergency actions otherwise would expire today. This is where you would otherwise take action to extend that local emergency declaration. There's lots of discussions these days about emergency declarations. Again, not to be confused with any others. The only reason that we did the local one is so that we could do these emergency actions like the 3 that you adopted. And quite frankly, we don't see organizationally that we're going to have any need to do anything else in the near future. So that's why there's no recommendation on the agenda tonight to extend that local declarations either. And I'm happy to answer any questions there might be.
Any questions of Keith? All right, what is the pleasure of council? I believe that, do we need to take a vote on accepting this? Yes? Okay, yep. So entertain a motion to accept the emergency action.
As information.
Moved by Trethewey. Support?
Support.
Support by Aaronsource. Any discussion? And I'm just going to, Keith, because I like to do this with you, I'm just going to clarify. This is the last of the 3 that we're anticipating. We're not asking for an extension of the state of emergency, the local state of emergency for the city of Holland. We don't anticipate that it's going to be needed, and it's just ending of its own volition because it was scheduled to end at this point anyway.
You said it more succinctly than I, yes.
Right. That was the correct answer on your part as well. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Aaronshorst?
That was slick.
Aaronshorst?
That's a yes. Yes.
Corbin?
Yes.
You got mine?
Yes.
Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Byrd?
Yes.
Peters? Garcia?
Yes.
Trethewey?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item is item number 9, written petitions and communications. It was referenced during the public comment period that we've received 21 email communications from members of the area community. At this point, we do need a motion to receive those into the record. Moved by Trethewey.
Support.
Support by Garcia. Any discussion? And this is a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item, I believe, is item 12E, communications from the city manager. Nope. Oh, gifts. I'm sorry, reading my own agenda incorrectly. Item 12E, 6.1, gifts. Kathy, would you please read the gifts for us?
The city manager's office is pleased to report the receipt of the following gifts. Downtown Group, Windmill Island Gardens, Holland Garden Club, $1,000. Public Safety Services, Police Operations, Holland Police Officers Association, Officer Bielengun, $448.50. Public Safety Services Fire Operations, Wilhelmina J. Steckity, Duty Cruise Food Gift Cards, $1,000. It is recommended that these donations be accepted with appreciation, credited to the appropriate account, and an expression of gratitude be forwarded to said donors.
Motion to accept with appreciation.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Byrd. Any discussion? Yes, Mr.
Just
Trethewey.
one minor thing. Mentioned here of Officer Beelen. Congratulations to Officer Beelen for a fine career. He retired this past week, actually 2 weeks ago. I am getting old because I remember when he started.
Yeah.
So,
No way.
he is going to be enjoying his retirement. Stop it, Quincy. And we wish him all the best.
Great.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mike. Definitely, definitely. Any other comments? All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now we have communications from the city manager.
Yes, I do want to take a little time and just give you a few updates on a variety of things and kind of foreshadow maybe as we're starting to maybe emerge out of some of this, some background. So first, and I apologize, I know this is small, but let me just go through this relatively quickly. This is a shot of the number of our employees that are in different working or non-working conditions as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic. The largest slice of that shows that 62% of our employees are working on-site their regular schedules as before. But what I really want to highlight there is when you take a look that police and fire, approximates 50% of our workforce. That's the majority of that slice of pie right there. And then when you take a look at our transportation department with the work that they do, which was definitely ongoing all the way through, although even they were on a rotating schedule at different times. And then when you take a look at some of the support personnel, particularly in City Hall, I can say it was a pretty, and continues to be a pretty sparse crew. When you get into those other pies, you will see it's a combination of working entirely remotely, 8% working combination of on-site and regular schedule remotely, 8%. Working combination of those, but at a reduced schedule, 3%, a reduced schedule on-site, 4%, a reduced schedule remote only, 4%, and then 11% not working at this point. And I'd like to highlight also that that doesn't include, a whole mass of seasonal people that we usually bring on in part-time or even full-time roles for a period of time. So I think that's interesting information for you all to have. But quite frankly, one of the messages that I want to remind is we seem to be getting to that point in time where, the first several weeks there weren't a lot of calls about, hey, I want this service, or hey, what's happening with this? And we're starting to get to that point. And it's just a reminder that there are large portions of our staff that still are not working and are not allowed to work. And we're just not providing certain services out there in the community. And quite frankly, that's not going to return back until June 1 in many places. And even then, we think that there's a possibility that it will be modified. So not just for the community, but also, quite frankly, a reminder for myself, but hopefully a reminder for all of you is maybe you might start getting constituent calls about why isn't this happening, or can someone look into this? And it's just a reminder that in most of the cases, it's because the staff is not working and those services aren't being provided. A transition there is that doesn't mean that we're not doing a ton of work to prepare to go back to work. So specifically, we have a crack team of people that we have called the Safe Return to Work team. And we're taking that guidelines from many different sources. We already have in place what's required, which is a preparedness and response plan. We've had that in place, quite frankly, for many weeks already. And they're working on, as we welcome back more employees in the coming weeks, that we are fully prepared for that. And have all of the different components, PPE, distancing, cleaning, training, and then what you see on the right-hand side is the employee health screening checklist. So administratively, I just want to assure council and the community that we are taking care of all of those things. We absolutely have a commitment to, need to, and will do all that we can to keep both our employees safe, by extension, the public also. Again, we're following guidelines. A lot of the when and how we reopen is still yet to be determined, and those directions given to us. But I would just let you know, and probably let the public know also, where when City Hall opens, I fully expect that City Hall will open the way that it closed before it closed, which is in the city lobby. I firmly expect, and we will have some type of a system again where people will be welcomed into the lobby. We'll utilize this space in a lot of different ways, but we will not be having people come and go all throughout City Hall. But that will be one of the stages back in the return. So just to let you know, we are working all of those contingency plans and have those in place. One of the things that we're also doing that I think at least a good portion of you are starting to participate in is, while this council continued to meet throughout, even though we didn't have study sessions, we are again starting the board, commission, committee process. On the screen there, I know it's really small, but those are screenshots of the Zoom meeting of the Planning Commission yesterday. I think Lynn and Mayor are probably maybe in one of those really small screens there, but so that process is starting up again. So, it's gone well, I believe. We're starting that slowly, however. There are just some things where we're still trying to keep it more essential type things, just the Zoom meeting format, and there's some things that are, probably I think the items on the various BCCs in some place might kind of start slow again. What I want to highlight, though, is not only that we're doing that, but there is an element, right, that things that quite often end up at a council study session or end up on your agendas, not all the time, but quite often they come through those BCC meetings. So as we start getting kind of more re-engaged and head back towards whatever normal is or was or is going to be, there is an element where as those BCCs start coming, it's not going to go from 0 to 100 right away. There's going to be some process of those coming through those systems with recommendations, with those groups that do that good, hard, detailed work before it comes to you. So just to highlight that. And then kind of an ancillary of that is, with the number of staff that I talked about that still is not working, there's so many other items. For those of you that have been in my office periodically, I've, behind my desk, my credenza, I have a whole bunch of folders on a wide variety of different things. And over the last 8 weeks, I dare say I haven't reached back and touched more than 1 or 2 of those folders. Just because the issues of the day have kept us more than busy, and that is not just a commentary on me, that's really a commentary on most of our leadership team. So it feels like we've lost 2 months. So there are things that we'll return to, but just like coming through the BCC process, some of those other things, it'll be a process of re-engaging and re-emerging and visiting those things and getting them in front of you. That being said, we're excited about doing that and kind of getting back to that. I'm eager to turn around and pull out some of those folders again. So at this point, I'll just let you know, even though the stay-at-home order would still be in place as of this date, we have a regular council meeting again next Wednesday, May 20. But at this point, I'm kind of trending towards recommending and thinking that we would have a study session on the 27th. So stay tuned, and unless you give feedback to the mayor, to me, or however that works, that's kind of what we're thinking right now. And then we'll start taking a look at some of those folders and putting together an agenda packet for you for, again, a study session on the 27th. Events. Today was a big day, and I'm going to ask Matt to come forward and talk about the farmers market and maybe a few other things that's occurring kind of in that downtown group that he manages so well. Thanks, Matt.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm going to start this kind of discussion off with the fact that farmers markets have been allowed under the governor's executive order from the very beginning. They're considered an essential service. Today was the scheduled opening of our regular farmers market season, and we opened. Looked a little different. I don't know if any of you got down there, but the farmers market is fenced off the main core area all the way from Pine Avenue to Maple. So we've got a lot of real estate in there that people can social distance and do things correctly. It was a very popular opening today. We had a lot of people down there. We limited the number of people that were in that big space to about 150. And we actually had just a couple spots in the fence where people were counted as they came in, and there were communication via walkie-talkie back and forth. I want to give VenueWorks a shout out when we're here today. There was a lot of coordination that needed to be done and a lot of staff beyond what we normally have on a farmers market day. They stepped up and provided not only the manpower to count and limit people that came in, but also to help with set up and tear down and just make sure things were going well. So, a little bit different procedures for the vendors themselves, how they can lay their food out, things that have to be prepackaged, but everything was done to MIFMA guidelines, and I'll just say that I couldn't be happier with the results of that today. People were able to stay safe. It was very popular, and you could just see the normalcy of opening our market at its regular time and the people being able to go down there. There was one, I'm going to call it a issue that we ran into that is actually, I think, a very positive thing for our community, and that is the fact that the EBT and the bridge cards and the double up food bucks programs, the double up food bucks, you can use your bridge card and get twice as much and go buy fruits and vegetables. The usage of that today, while it's probably a sad thing, was very high, and we had to order another about 1,000 coins because we're concerned that we would run out this weekend. So we're reacting, but people are able to come down to the farmers market. They're able to double their money, so to speak, if they're having trouble getting food for themselves, and do so in the market. Just a couple other things while I'm up here, and Keith doesn't have the ability to mute my microphone. The DDA and the PSD, there's been some questions out there about, we talked to you at budget time about what are we going to do with 8th Street. There's a joint meeting tomorrow of the DDA and the PSD. I know Raul will be in attendance, and those downtown merchants will help us figure out what that should actually look like for the upcoming season. If you do go downtown, take a look. A lot of more of the businesses that are non-restaurants are providing curbside service. That information is generally in their windows, so if you have a chance, please be customers of those downtown businesses in the future. Windmill Island is a passive park, right? In the off-season, when the island's passive, none of our attractions are open. We don't have any restrooms that are available to the general public. That's very clear with signage, but people are still coming out to look out what is at Windmill Island Gardens. We are really actively monitoring the situation for the number of people that are coming out there. I'm out there at least a couple times a day, every day. We have staff Saturday and Sunday. I know I've seen a certain red vehicle drive through there at the same time I do. So we're all keeping a very close eye on that. But we do see a very steady stream of traffic coming in and out. Hopefully that's a lot of locals enjoying the tulips without too many out-of-towners, but we will continue to monitor that situation. Sounds like we've got some high temperatures coming next week that will probably end the tulips for this season, and we'll begin our 11 months of looking forward to the ones that will come up next season. So unless there's any questions, that's what I have for you.
So
Great.
yes,
Yeah.
Matt,
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Nikki.
Is the farmers market now on Saturdays too, or just when?
Yeah,
Okay,
we're
so
on our
this is
regular
the
schedule.
season started.
We're
Okay.
gonna we had talked about really invigorating the Monday night market.
and even getting bands and that kind of thing down there. At this point, I think it's best for us to just wait until a little bit further on into the summer to see how that plays out, but we will be doing Wednesdays and Saturdays from here on out.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any other questions for Matt? Okay. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Matt, doing a great job coordinating with those groups in the downtowns. You know, events, I just want to take a moment here. So there's going to be a variety of events that are city events, and a lot of times there's organization events, other organizations that use city facilities, and quite often it's like, oh, well, that's a city event, and then more often than not, it's not, but they just happen to use city facilities, so there's always this kind of interesting. I'll let you know that there will start to be, right, hey, this event, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? And then you might hear of an event that's further out that gets canceled. And we're going to try to be as best we can continue to be with communication, understanding that right now, you know, quite often communication is hard, right? Or different things are interpreted. There might be events that are canceled either by us or by an outside organization that might be further out. And that doesn't necessarily mean that all city events are canceled, you know, from now until that date. We're going to continue to take a look at, of course, organizations can cancel their own events. We're going to continue to take a look at the best guidelines that we have in place. But sometimes there's just limiting factors, like you have to make a call of booking something or not. So that might say, hey, we need to make this call, and this event still kind of seemingly far out is not going to happen. And yet we're going to try to delay as best we can in other situations, like, hey, we still kind of hope that event can happen, so we're not going to make a call on that. So we'll continue to do the best we can in communications in that way, but just know that we're going to just keep muddling our way through that. We're going to follow the best guidelines and advice of the health professionals. And again, the underlying there is we're going to only do things that are deemed safe. Then I will stop talking, except for I want to throw it to Kathy Grimm, who has an announcement on elections, and I think really something positive for the community. So thanks, Kathy, for all you do and for this announcement.
Thank you. At the direction of legal counsel of Ottawa County, the Ottawa County Clerks has been instructed to mail ballot applications to all registered voters in Ottawa County. Because the Ottawa County Clerk Office oversees the elections for the City of Holland, there's some implications. Ballots issued in response to applications are considered absentee voter ballots. The goal is to encourage absentee voting due to the current coronavirus environment so that voters do not have to go to the polls. The state has not made any decisions or recommendations on the voting process for August or November, but applications need to be mailed out by June 5, so timing is important. Ottawa County will work with printing systems to secure and mail absent voter ballot applications to all voters in the City of Holland who live in the Ottawa County portion of the city, which is 19,961 voters, and will prepare the applications for voters in the Allegan County portion of the city. But the city will be responsible for mailing those applications, and that's about 5,819 voters. Voters will have the option to request an August and November ballot on the same dual application, and the city currently has 25,780 registered voters. So that's how many applications will be going out.
I think that's great news. I think that's great news. That's from Justin Robach from the Ottawa.
Right, the county,
Yeah,
yes.
I think that's good, being proactive like that.
It's going to change the look of how the clerk's office handles elections.
We've got mail.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
yeah.
there'll be a lot of work, and there's budget implications in there also. It's fantastic that the county board and Justin stepped up in this way, I believe. But, you know, doing an all-mail election and the postage for the ballots, and, you know, so we will work on that. you're gonna get sick of me talking about budget amendments, but that's one of those areas,
Yeah.
right? But,
Didn't expect that.
really appreciate the county, I appreciate Justin, appreciate Kathy, so, we will, as Kathy and Brenda said, it's the removal of uncertainty that they really appreciate that. We now know what to expect as we move into, this primary, so I think this is good news.
Great. Any other questions, comments for Kathy or for Keith? Great. Thank you both. Appreciate it. And you too, Matt. Appreciate it. Next item is appointments and communication from the mayor. Under section 6.3 of the city charter, mayor is authorized to make the appointment of the city attorney with the advice and consent of city council. Keith and I have reviewed there's a slight increase in fees for the next 2 years. I've had the wonderful opportunity to work with Ron as city attorney, I think for more than maybe a dozen years. We go way back to zoning board years and years ago, and that's been a great experience. Ron would continue the city work. Vince Duckworth would be dealing with BPW more. Is that correct, Ron?
That is correct. We've sort of teamed the work on the BPW.
Okay, wonderful. And so the recommendation from the mayor is to appoint Ron Vanderveen as city attorney and Vince Duckworth as city attorney for utility affairs. And I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You have it. It's your turn.
So moved.
Moved by Hoekstra. Do we have support?
I'll support it.
Support by Ernst. Any discussion? Seeing none. Roll call vote. Oh, yes, Ron.
If I could just make a comment here a minute.
Sure.
I just want to say that I've always appreciated the opportunity to work with the city and to serve the city in this capacity, especially the last few years as city attorney, and really do look forward to the next the 2 years term that's up for appointment. The fees we've kept the same for this coming year with a slight increase for the next year after that.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you. Any other comments? And I believe this one is a roll call vote. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Corbin?
Yes.
Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Byrd?
Yes.
Peters? Garcia?
Yes.
Trethewey?
Yes.
Arnshorst?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I've just got a couple of items. One, I do, again, we've been mentioning this throughout the meeting, but it bears repeating over and over again, the incredible job that staff has been doing, and looking at the chart, realizing that the incredible number of staff people that aren't here. I've been seeing it in City Hall. It is very quiet here during the day. There are not a lot of people, but there's still a lot going on. And I think it says a whole lot about city staff that we've been in this now for almost 2 months, and you're just now getting the folks who are saying, hey, I think I'd like to be doing this thing or that thing. And I think what that says is that you guys have done a great job of keeping the lights on, of keeping the wheels turning, to the point where a lot of folks probably didn't notice that staff has been way down. So thank you, Keith, and thank you to all of your staff for the great work that they've been doing to see us through all of this, because it has been literally every day waking up and saying, well, what will today bring? And will today be the day that I can reach back and look at one of those file folders back behind my desk, and then realizing midway through the afternoon that there's no way that you're going to have the time to be able to look at those file folders. So we appreciate that. And we know that that's not going on just in your office, but in every office that's occupied here in City Hall. As all of you, I'm sure, know, we've been doing communication videos twice a week, and that we're trying to get others engaged. And we did try to get Raul to be in a speaking part in that one, but weren't able to do that, so we included pictures on that. We've been reaching out to some other groups as well. We'd like to say we have a long-term plan for what the subject matter is going to be of each one of those videos. And every time we seem to plan, there's something pops in, and they tend to write themselves. We're hoping to transition to one a week, and then hopefully at some point, maybe less than one a week, which would be a kind of a nice thing as part of our moving toward that new bit of normalcy that we've been alluding to all night, with things like the farmers market opening, with the boards and commissions starting to work more, with more staff members coming on. starting to transition into a different phase of this, and hopefully moving back into regular work at some point in the near rather than farther away future. There are 4 items that I want to highlight in regard to what's going on in the community. As we heard in the public comment period, some of our businesses, local businesses, especially our smaller businesses, are really struggling during this. And we want to do what we can to be able to support those businesses, especially our downtown businesses who are involved in our PSD and our DDA. And to that end, there are 2 new websites that are out there. The first one is Shop Downtown Holland, which is a listing of those downtown merchants who are, I know you guys are fighting with the remotes back there. Shop Downtown Holland, and it is shopdowntownholland.com. List the local merchants that you're able to order from online, that you're able to do curbside pickup. Please do patronize our local downtown merchants as much as you possibly can. We have great local merchants, some who've been here for decades, family-owned businesses. We really want to do what we can to help them survive through this and then thrive in the days after. The second website, they both launched last week, is Dine Downtown Holland. Very similar to Shop Downtown Holland. It is local downtown restaurants that you can do pickup service from. A great opportunity. It gives you a link to the business right through there. I've used it myself, gone to order, gone to pick up the food, and it's great to be able to patronize those local businesses. Next is the Downtown Relief Fund. And this is a collaborative project between the Michigan West Coast Chamber of Commerce and the Community Foundation of the Holland Zeeland area. It's currently funded with $150,000 to be used for grants for area businesses who are in the downtown Holland area and the downtown Zeeland area. Those grants are $10,000, up to $10,000 apiece. There are more details on the West Coast Chamber's website, and the deadline is pretty short on this. If you're interested in applying for one of these grants, the deadline is, I believe, the close of business on Monday, May 18th. So get yourself in there. And not everyone who applies is going to be able to get a grant, but they want to try to get as much as they can in the hands of those local businesses to be able to help them survive through this. And then, as we've mentioned, it was incredibly unfortunate that the Tulip Time Festival had to be canceled this year. This is an incredible economic engine for the community. When Tulip Time did their economic impact study in 2018, they showed that they bring $48 million of new activity, new dollars into the community every single year with the festival, and they're definitely struggling this year. They spent the year planning, they spent much of it prepping and paying for the things that then ended up not being able to provide them with income this year, and so they have a GoFundMe campaign to help them make it through to next year to stand with Tulip Time. And you can find that either on their website, you can find that through their Facebook page, or you can go directly to charity.gofundme.com/Tulip Time. They have been a tradition in this community for over 90 years. We want to make sure that tradition continues, and it's not going to be able to continue without the support of this community moving forward. So we appreciate that. And with that, I do believe there is just motions, communications, and appointments from council members. Any communications from council members? Yes, Mr. Hoekstra.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to address an item that has been discussed earlier in the evening regarding the community energy plan and our commitment and priority to revisit that. A lot's been said already, so I don't want to rehash all of that stuff, but we have made it a priority as a council to take a look at that. Much of that is due in no small part to communications from those in the community who are suggesting that this is a good thing to do. And I think as wise people, we listened to good counsel and made a priority. I guess the question is, where does that task land? And there's a number of places it could go. There's the Sustainability Commission, which has been around for a while, a place historically where the community energy plan was initiated, and through good work, like people like Warren Stuck and Don Triesenberg and a number of other people, the community energy plan was sort of birthed and given its traction to go forward, embellished and worked on further and further enhanced by good work through the BPW and their expertise. So it could go there. It could also land, as is being proposed, under the purview of the strategic development team, which has looked at it, as has been referenced earlier, a number of years ago and tweaked, and the focus sort of changed a little bit here and there. I can give witness to both of those because I was in both meetings, CEP, sustainability, and the strategic development plan. Not that I was, making any huge contributions there. Mostly I tried to stay out of the way of better minds who could do that. So, a number of organizations or committees could easily take a look at this, what's being proposed. And I guess one of the proposals that we're hearing from some community sources is that there should be an independent group made up of local folks who know about this stuff to take a look at it. How that ultimately plays out, I guess I'm not going to make a suggestion or a recommendation at this point. I think what some of us are feeling the need for is a discussion amongst us about kind of what that looks like. I don't think we would, as a group, try to propose exactly how a committee should go about their business. We should, or could we really do that? But I think it is within our purview to offer suggestions on some structure. And my sense is that that's kind of what a lot of us are feeling the need to do and having a discussion about that. The reason I bring that up is because, my arm hurts when I do that. I don't go to my mechanic and ask him for his advice because he'll probably say, well, don't do that. Which is perfectly reasonable because he knows how to fix my car, but he doesn't know why my arm hurts when this happens. I go seek out the person who has the most insight into what happens when your elbow moves and why it might hurt when it does that. I look for someone who can give me the best reasonable explanation, insight into what to do. And if my doctor tells me just don't do that, I'm not going to pay him because I'm talking to a mechanic and I'm not a doctor. Point is, I think it behooves us to look for the best sources of information that we can when we're looking at something as important and as much as we own as a community energy plan. I think, and that's not to suggest at all or to imply that our current staff or those who are serving on committees don't have the ability to do the same thing. But why do we get second opinions? It's because maybe this group of people or that person has a better insight or knows a little bit more about a given subject than someone else. And I think a wise person or group is one that recognizes that and takes advantage and leverages every bit of expertise and information they can within their ability to do so. Within this community, we have seen historically an amazing amount of enthusiasm and commitment and passion, as well as knowledge, given around a number of subjects, energy and related subjects especially. As Jay said, we have the Hope College community ready and willing and able to assist us in this. So I'm not going to make a motion about anything, but I would fervently request, I guess, that as soon as we're able to have study sessions again or opportunities to have discussions among us, not in a formal sense like this, but when we're able to visit that as Nikki suggested, we have a couple of really high priorities, but let's make this one that we talk about sooner rather than later and talk about not necessarily how a committee should do it, but what resources could they use to get the most bang for our buck, I guess. We've got a lot of bucks there. How we're going to use them is yet to be determined. But, if we could get some free advice, that's even better, as far as coming from a Dutchman anyway. So that's the gist of what I wanted to say. And You know, I think we have an opportunity here to use resources that have historically served us well in the past and can do so again in the future. So let's just be smart about how we can do that. Thank you very much. Yield the floor.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Any other communications, motions from council? Yes, Mike.
We've got to do something about this, just banging my knee against the wire. Yeah, I can take care of that. Back in 1962, President John F. Kennedy signed a proclamation which designated May 15 as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the week in which that falls is Police Week. We happen to be in that week. And what is more fitting for our first responders, specifically our law enforcement officers, to celebrate what they're doing. So I just wanted to bring that up. It's something I do every year. They have canceled the big memorial service up in Washington, where there's typically between 25 and 40,000 people, 25,000 and 40,000 people that go to that. I know the county had their celebration at the memorial this morning. So just remember our first responders, remember our police officers, our sheriff deputies, state police officers, all those in law enforcement, the first responders. If you get a chance, thank them for what they do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any other motions, communications from council? With that, I believe there's just one item remaining on the agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support? Support. Support by Peters. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.